So before we get kicked off, because we've got some new people along, I'm just going to introduce myself. So for those of you who don't know, I am Harry Cobbold, and I'm the founder of Unfold. We're an e-commerce agency based in Bristol. We've got two kind of core specialisms, if you like. One is UX design, so making software really easy to use, really intuitive and better for users and customers. And the second one is web development. So we make bespoke web applications, booking funnels using Laravel, and we also build a lot of e-commerce stores using WooCommerce. We do lots of kind of sectors, from storage to plants. We've been all over the place, but sometimes we do private chefs, which is very nicely going to bring me on to our fabulous guest, Siddhi, who I'm going to ask to introduce herself in a minute. She'll do a much better job than I will. But just before we do that, this is kind of part of a series of events called Below the Fold, which we're putting on every month. And we do that on the second Thursday of the month. And in that time, we ask someone fantastic like Siddhi to come along and really to find out what it takes to make a successful business, focusing on a few different areas, and really just a chance to kind of ask questions, learn from them, and hear about their story. So I'll be telling you more about the kind of second episode at the end of today. But without further ado, I will say a big thank you again to Siddhi for coming along, and ask you to say hello to everyone and introduce yourself, and obviously yhangry, which is the business that you are a co-founder of.
Yeah, of course. Hey, everyone. Nice to be here. So I am the co-founder of yhangry. yhangry is a marketplace where you can book a private chef to help you host a dinner party from as little as £30 per person. It's as easy as choosing your own dishes and instantly confirming your booking. We offer like a range of incredible, authentic, trendy cuisines, Caribbean, Indian, sushi, bao buns, whatever you want, really. The mission of yhangry very much was we wanted to get people together in their homes in a very easy and quick fashion. And for us, like private chefs that are easy to book and accessible was the answer to that. A little bit about me is I was born in India. I went to New York, Columbia to do my undergrad in computer science. Started off on the trading floor, trading financial mortgages and a lot of bonds, and moved to London, did that for six and a half years. Then met my co-founder who was in sales. I was in trading. We both just really hit it off as like great friends and realized we both come from such a common background of I'm from India, she's German Chinese, of developing sort of countries where we grew up in a home that was always filled with great food and people. And as like immigrants in London, it's going to a restaurant feels very transactional. And we just wanted to have some friends over once in a while. And we just thought it wasn't easy if you weren't someone who cooked. So got together, realized this was our own problem. And we were like, cool, let's like find a way to make this happen. And then we quit our corporate jobs and launched yhangry together.
Fantastic. So I can't imagine what it would be like to leave a job as a trader, which I'm imagining was, that's a fairly safe career, good income, and go and launch a startup. What made you do that?
Yeah, I think 3-4 years in, I thought it was like the best job ever. I didn't understand why everyone wanted to be a trader. You got to sort of put on risk worth like 500 million or more, put on all these trades and just sort of like play with money, which felt like monopoly money. And you were making a lot of, I think like ultimately your paycheck rose quite significantly. So I think like 4th, 5th year in where the paycheck became really big, I realized my happiness didn't really scale at all. It was like the inverse. And I just was very confused because to me, success was defined by how much I could earn in like a trading role. I think what I found for myself was I just wanted to build something which had value that I could scale and kind of leave sort of a mark on the world, but really be building something that will change the world, or like just be bigger than just going to work every single day and doing something that doesn't really change lives. And it took a while. I think it took me a couple of years to finally get to the point of like having an idea, finding a co-founder and saying, this is the right time. I now have my parents who are on board. And I think I just needed things to align to finally get myself to quit, which then ended up happening like 6.5 years in. So I would say there was like this 2-year phase where you were still doing your job, but this was just at the back of your mind eating at you. And then like a couple things had to align, like idea, co-founder, just like the urgency to quit. And then it feels like rest was all history, but I feel like that period was definitely like very mentally challenging. And I think like the core fear was I didn't want to give up my paycheck. And then you have to like logically work downward saying, okay, why? Because paycheck makes me feel like I'm independent and I don't want to give that up. Okay, why? Right. Okay, because like that's how my metric of success is. Okay, but what happens if that doesn't happen? Then you're like, okay, actually I do have savings, it'll last me some amount of time. So I think you have to logically talk down to yourself, and it just boils down to this weird fear of not having a paycheck anymore, which is like completely rubbish, because you could go back into other jobs, you can find another job, and you do have savings. And I think I really needed to get to that point before I could quit.
And then taking that leap, I guess, also sounds like a kind of search for purpose as well, in terms of wanting something which was more meaningful than necessarily, like you say, the monopoly money that the bank is peddling. What about hospitality? Because it's quite an interesting sector, and certainly I don't know if you'd have made the same decision around that industry pre-COVID, because obviously you started pre-COVID. Would you have made the same decision during COVID? How has that affected the business and been a kind of playing part in that?
Yeah, I think that I won't change a thing actually. And I know COVID comes with its ups and downs, and for like more sectors than just hospitality. So I think like briefly, I feel hospitality comes with like a lot of baggage. There is a lot of space that's like you need to pay sort of mortgage for, or you're renting, and it comes with a lot of fixed expenses and things like that. Whereas like a food tech is a lot more sexier, and it's a marketplace, and you're actually just like, there's demand, there's supply, and you're trying to do a great job of like matching that and adding value on both sides. So to me, like yhangry really, yes, it is food, but it's ultimately bringing people together. Like it's the ultimate form of in real life meetups, and it's like a social platform in a way. And I think like food is what powers it, because every time you meet someone, you do something, and that's like eat or drink. And so for us, this was very much an idea that made sense before pandemic. Like people were doing that, like we saw growth, but also actually through pandemic, even more people started making their homes nicer. And they were like, actually, like, now I actually have made my dining room look a bit better. I've like traded an apartment because I now want a nicer apartment because I live in this more. Like there's like this Waitrose report that talks about how over 50% of people, etc., prefer staying in, or like that's like the ratio, stay in versus stay out, and like just like the rise of kind of homebodies. So I think those trends have also helped us for sure going through COVID, where people have just become more comfortable. And this has just become a bit more mainstream again. However, I wouldn't say that I would have changed that. And I didn't actually think of we were going into hospitality. It was just a way of people socializing, and we are able to facilitate that through a tech platform.
Yeah, oh, fantastic. And what's the kind of outlook? What are you expecting in terms of as the world goes back to sort of normal, if you like? Are you expecting people to continue that trend?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like just to kind of, we're not anti-restaurants at all. I love going to restaurants. There's so many restaurants I want to try. I think the way we see it is people have a certain amount of wallet share for socializing that includes restaurants, but also entertaining, or like seeing their friends in a year. That could be like 12 to 24 times you go hang out with friends, etc. yhangry, we see it's something you'll use either twice a year, 4 times a year, 6 times a year. And like for every time you go out, or every couple of times you go out, you're like, actually today let's just like stay in and let's do a great meal. And maybe that's like 6 of you around a table, or maybe you're like, actually like just come over to mine, like 15 people, whatever that looks like. So yeah, I think in terms of yhangry, anytime you want to meet your friends at home, that's where we step in. And there's like a very clear need for that. And it's not this versus that. So I think, yeah, like from what our customers are doing, like how people, like 70% of our customers actually have never used a private chef before. And I think that is kind of a testament to sort of how we build the product. It's easy. It's kind of like it reminds you of Uber or Deliveroo, where it just is very, very quick. And that's for like the modern millennial, where you just don't have time. Like chefs comes with this connotation of like, oh my God, like this sounds very a little bit posh, like not for me, definitely going to back and forth. It's too, yeah, it's just like too fancy maybe. Whereas we are just changing that into trendy food, authentic food, stuff that you eat at like the coolest restaurants, but actually maybe you can just do that in your home now. So yeah, I think like for us, the food choice combined with how flexible and easy it is to book, and the fact that people do like to stay in sometimes with their friends, etc., is just where yhangry sits.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's really interesting hearing you talk about the kind of reason for being and how yhangry is disrupting the industry. You've obviously just raised a huge round of, is it 1.5 million, right, in terms of your last round raised?
That's right.
And some like fantastic investors as well, like Eileen Burbidge, who obviously invested in Monzo, Go Cardless, etc. What was the narrative that you used to get investors excited, and was that difficult?
I would say like a past round, we closed in like sort of under 2 weeks. And I think obviously like the behind the scenes, we did the work, we had the list, we knew we were going to reach out to. But I think there are a couple of things that really sort of worked in our favor. Firstly, it's like a pre-seed, really early round. We wanted people that are used yhangry to come invest. And that did include a bunch of our friends that come from the world of finance, but also like half of the round was taken up by one of yhangry super users. So the story was really strong. We just saw people love the business. They'd used us multiple times and they were like, awesome, we'll give you money because it's a great idea. So I think that's like the bit which was like really nice, because once we have people that are using it, wanting to invest, it's like we're doing something right. And then I think away from that, for our narrative, yeah, we just spoke. Well, I think you just have to like talk about like the best parts of your business, or like, and I think for us, there are quite a few of them. Like to start, like we are a very viral business. And what that means is that every dinner, there'll be on average 6 to 7 people that you're gonna invite and that are gonna use yhangry, and they're gonna say, oh my gosh, that's so cool, I'll do it next. And so what that means is like over 50% of our customers actually just come through word of mouth. And that includes like guests, people telling each other. So it's like a very strong, organic, powerful engine. And we also know, coupled with the fact that 70% of them are used it, we are growing the market. So like that's like quite exciting, quite very positive. And I feel like away from that, we know kind of like the stats, we know people have a budget, it's increasing, people care more about experiences, especially after COVID. It's like just meeting people is such a big thing. And I think we are bringing, great food at a click of a button in your home. And even within UK, like however we slice and dice this, the market opportunity is just so big that this could be like $1 billion opportunity just within UK if we had to like, talk kind of minute numbers. So I think it's just pitching is sort of like for us, it was explaining why we are very much going after sort of the $1 billion vision and what are like the reasons that makes our business quite powerful, virality being one of like the strongest ones.
Yeah, I can really imagine that. Yeah, certainly. I guess my next question is then, when's it coming to Bristol? Because a lot of people watching today might well be from a kind of our ecosystem of Bristol. So when are you going to be expanding outside of London?
Yeah, actually, soon. We'll keep you up, but I think it's funny, like, it's definitely on the cards and like sooner than later.
Yeah. And is that kind of like UK expansion as well then, I'm guessing?
Yeah, so I think like we are going through like a slight business model change, which has like made it even more exciting, a lot more tech than it was before. And we are, again, I think every time you go through some change, you want to make sure that like where you are, you get it right. And I think that's London for us. But now, like for us, very much, it's kind of like a platform that makes it very easy to transact. Like we've built up our technology, we're still learning things. However, now sort of like expanding into cities is like really quite quick for us. And we need to onboard great chefs, and then like we can then suddenly open that up to customers. So I think like forward looking, by having the change in our model from more operations logistics heavy to a tech platform has actually it's allowed us to become a lot more easily expandable. And we will definitely be capitalizing on that in like the future when we are like, right, cool, like we're ready to sort of hit the button and hit more cities up.
because that's one thing that already kind of struck me, or struck me when we worked together back in 2020, was that you had already kind of produced an MVP, and you were very much pro kind of, let's just put something out that's fairly imperfect, learn about things, and then adapt and pivot and change as we go. And I've always thought that was one of the strengths of yourself and yhangry. What is that latest change been driven by then, in terms of what are you changing, and what were the kind of things that you learned that led you to make that change?
Yeah, I think just to start off, definitely that is who we are. And like we are, and sometimes it can be scary, but I think it's so exciting to just get out there because you get instant feedback rather than surveys and all this stuff. So we've always been like an advocate for that. So for a change for us was initially we were quite involved in like doing groceries and the logistics of the booking to ensure chef didn't have to do grocery shopping. And we also curated the menus because we were like, if we do all the work, all we need to do is like match the chef and we make their life so much easier. And then on the customer side, it's like a seamless booking experience. You don't really care which chef is coming. And I think although actually a big part of the model worked really well, it scaled well, I think like there is this realization through the years, and a bit slow, where it's like, look, chefs are so incredible. They cook amazing food. One chef is not the same as another. And the stuff they'll cook, if you ask them what they love, is completely different. Even if it's two, let's say, Indian chefs, one will do like street food really, really well. And the other is like, no, actually, I love like sit down, this like dal and all this other stuff. And by centralizing that food choice, we were actually limiting our own supply, which is a little bit insane because we were running an Uber model where no matter what you book, we guaranteed a chef show up, which is quite cool for people that are like, I just don't care. However, the eBay Amazon model is actually quite superior, where if your supply is differentiated, you unlock more demand. Like now that we can offer Caribbean or African cuisines, wow, like people want that food. Like anyone who wants jollof rice or jerk chicken doesn't want like a Pan Asian feast. And it's just going to be like, no, I want what I want. And I feel that's like the core for us, where we were like, we obviously are two-sided, and there's a lot on the chef side that I haven't even gone into, but we care a lot. We're giving them better lives and opportunities and such a great experience. But like the second bit of it is like, yes, actually, in this model, we've forgotten that the chef is this individual person. So we have made the tweak to, instead of doing groceries and all this logistics, actually sort of spotlight the best insane dishes that the chefs can do, create actually like the most insane curation of dishes and menus, which you're like, oh, every time, that's insane. I love that. It's like such fusion, so different that it's like a new restaurant every single time in your own home. And yeah, it's really exciting actually, because in future, how we build this platform again will radically change. Like, do we then start supporting these chefs on groceries? Not for the customer, but for the chefs. What do the chefs want to be supported? And that's actually, we're already seeing that's a bunch of like analytics, like pricing data. Chefs don't fully understand how to do this stuff by themselves, like how to like sell their menus and all this stuff. But yeah, it's very different to what we were initially doing. Now we're very much doing it as a perspective of great food from chef, connecting to the customer, connecting them both. However, enabling the chef to actually shine and make the stuff like so easy for the chef, for them to be able to actually be a private chef, because there are high barriers of entry.
It's such an interesting insight to see how that's transformed since, in such a short space of time, almost a year, 2 years. And already just listening to you, it just makes sense, doesn't it? Like as a customer of that service, when you're selling someone on that narrative of like, actually, it's a more personal experience, and this is your chef and this is what he loves to make, and that's going to be amazing. That's a really exciting proposition for customers, reduces choice. So yeah, really, really cool. I can see how that's really going to fly. So thanks for kind of sharing that. So one of the things we kind of put in the title of this talk, obviously, is that you've had a lot of success publicly, both on BBC's Dragon's Den. And I'd like to start there actually, and just find out just tell us what that experience was like, because I'm sure everyone's watched the show. And just curious to know.
Yes, so different from behind the scenes versus on screen. So like a very quick summary: BBC scattered us with like And then we said, sure, we're happy to audition. That process actually took like a couple months with a lot of documents, diligence checks. So it's actually pretty intense, like more intense than a pre-seed round. So it's a bit crazy, but then we just kept saying, look, I think for us, it's like, we're going to take all the shots that are given to us and we're just going to say yes. And this was like in the pits of COVID where everything was like really upsetting and like, oh gosh, like terrible. So we went on and then startups. So we were actually in the den for around 2 hours plus, like 2.5 hours just doing the interview. Whereas the on-screen time was 15 minutes when it appeared. So it's actually a full day. Like we went to Manchester, like a day before, prepped all this stuff in an Airbnb the night before, then took it over. Then there's like makeup and then there's rehearsals and they're pre-interviewed. It is a full day. By the time you're out, you're like, I don't really know what I went through. It was so long, but it was really, really fun. And actually after that, it's like what we didn't know is if we were going to be on TV, because a lot of startups get cut. So actually there's like a lot of like churn. And even if you make it to the audition, if it wasn't like great, you don't get on. But I think for us, like we had said going in that we wanted Tish Lalvani and we were like, oh, and Peter Jones. And then because we got both of them, it feels like TV, right? It's like what you said then happened. And they actually showed that in our episode. I will say like overall memories of that are like really, really like intense, but fun because it was exciting. And I think it was so real in the den. It's just like all these questions were so intense, really quite rigid. An investor would actually never ask stuff like that, but you just really had to kind of explain from the ground up what you were doing, why you were doing it. And yeah, and they weren't like easy on you. So I would say it was like really good practice, like real life practice.
Yeah, so okay, it's good to know that it's a rigorous process. So you had to do a lot of due diligence almost before you went on.
Yeah. And it's like a lot of applications. Every single fact we say gets fact checked before and then also after. So everything we said on the show, also then after we had to fact check it. So they're actually very diligent with what they do. And it almost became like too cumbersome. You were like, I don't really care like what's happening here. It's just like you send some stuff and more stuff comes your way. So they're pretty
lots of paperwork, the realities of running a startup.
I know it's insane.
So have you got much like FaceTime with Peter and Tej post investment?
So we actually said no to the deal after Dragon Sense. So it didn't actually go through. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, we do speak to Tej sometimes on email. He's wonderful, but we said we. Can we know the reasons behind the deal falling through for you? Yeah, I think it was like for us. We just sort of off platform, you get to sort of ask questions and understand how much of the company you're actually okay giving up and for what amount. So I think commercial reasons and also just generally like how you can see people helping you. And I think the truth is that a lot of startups will benefit Dragon Sense sort of if they're a good that could be stored in a supermarket or things like that. However, for a tech marketplace, there's really limited way to sort of like add value. Like we just have to figure out what it is, what is the product feature that causes like our flywheel going. So I think, those two reasons combined together, it just didn't really make sense. But I think they were pretty like good about it. And it's like a handshake.
Yeah, and that kind of makes sense, isn't it? Because you're obviously paying a premium in terms of equity to them for their name to sort of be invested and, you know, the airtime. So it's if they're not opening doors for you in a supermarket, then where does that kind of price pay off? So yeah, that makes sense. The other very exciting thing that you announced not so long ago is that you've joined Y Combinator as well, which is obviously a hugely well-regarded program, and very keen to find out kind of how you got involved with that and what the process has been like. Has it been valuable, I guess?
Yeah, of course. It's been, wow, like so intense how we got involved with it. So last year we were like I think we sat down to write an application at 11 p.m. and the deadline was like 3 a.m. or something our time. And we just were like, we're not going to spend too much time because if we get in, that's awesome. But to be honest, like we should be building our business. So I think we just like procrastinated until we really had to do it. Heard back a month later, had our first interview. We actually had like a quick second interview, and then we got in. And I think the stats, I'm not sure if they've released it or not, but they will at some point of like how many people, but a lot of people are actually second time or more applicants because people seem to apply to YC over and over again. So I think like in a way, yeah, we got in like the first time. It was quite exciting. We obviously were like, oh my gosh, I think when you get to YC, I don't know how many people like rejected, but it is like quite exciting. And we had like a bunch of calls with founders and people, and everyone was like, you have to do it. It's just like such a no-brainer. I think it's like where the likes of Airbnb, Coinbase, Stripe, like any big sort of company, think of Instacart, DoorDash, like it seems to be like YC originated. So for us, the fact that we want to go global, and I think just sort of having that kind of caliber and talent talking to us and like helping us build our company was a no-brainer. So then we said yes to YC. We are currently in batch W22. So it lasts until end of March when there's a demo day, actually. That's like the big day. All investors then, all the companies present very quickly. Yeah, it's been like very, I would say, intense, higher highs, lower lows. And I think going into Y Combinator, you really feel like, wow, we made it. And then going through Y Combinator, you got to put in the work. And yeah, we're putting in the work, but it's been a very sort of transformative experience. And I think our sort of big change has come through this. And I think like we're now even more changing things when they don't work even quicker. It's like, it just doesn't matter. Let's just like rip it out. So I think within like 2 days, we changed our full website, and like stuff was completely broken, but we were like, if we've decided to change the model, we're just going to do it overnight. And I think like, yeah, we're just becoming like a little bit more insane, actually, is how I feel.
Fantastic. We've got some people starting to pop questions in the Q&A, which I'm going to flash up in a minute, but also feel free to kind of drop them in the chat, and I'm going to start feeding those in. Just one last question from me on the Y Combinator stuff. What is obviously it's a lot of work that you're putting into that whole process, and we were sort of chatting about that before we started. What's like the big value for yourself and for yhangry that comes out of that experience? So why is it worth putting that work in?
For Y Combinator, so I guess there are 2 levels. So I guess, is the question why YC?
I guess it's so well regarded. I want to understand why it is so well regarded, and above and beyond just the name being associated to you, why is it so precious?
And I think yes, and I think like the most obvious kind of should answer is like, oh, YC is like such so cool, we said yes. I think there's a little bit of brand value. There's quite a bit of brand value, and like it changes perception. But I think like going through the process, like I would say 2 key things. One is you get like group partners that are kind of dedicated to kind of speaking about your company. These are the people who go speak to, etc. For us, it's Michael Seibel, and this is the guy who like built Twitch, sold it to Amazon, and has seen, like literally told Airbnb to join YC, and then they joined YC and then became billionaires. And I just feel the history is so rich, but for me, it's more people there that are guiding us have actually seen so many companies become billion-dollar companies and more. And actually, if you were to ask for advice, I want to hear the advice from people who have like done that scaling. Like they will tell you upfront from what they see the company stumble later on. And it's like, instead of making those mistakes, someone's just there saying, look, I've just seen hundreds of companies go through that. That's not going to work. What about this? And I feel like that value add really comes through every single group hour on a weekly basis, where you're like, oh my gosh, like how, like, they are not easy on you. They really allow you to question your bullshit that you're feeding yourself. And I think it's like, talk to your customer more. Like, come on, that's not working. Let's make that work. And yeah, it feels like it's like a very open experience where YC says, look, every startup's shit, and actually you're trying to make it really good. And I think like they just approach it in such a, in a way where you're just like, they're like, right, okay, cool. Like, what are we going to do about this? So it's very, yeah, so you get to be very real with yourselves, one. And I think the second is you just meet like a lot of great founders. And I think that's true with a lot of communities, but just the depth of people you could reach out to. Like now we have, like we could reach out to people from Airbnb because all of their numbers are listed. Like there's this whole community and directory of YC across the world that we can just reach out to is a little bit insane in itself. And the fact that you just always get access to that ecosystem. So I think yeah, between both of those two things, it seemed pretty worth it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I certainly haven't got access to the YC Combinator network, but it's that peer-to-peer learning is just so valuable, isn't it? When you can talk through problems that perhaps have been rattling around in your own head and then actually just talk to someone who's been through that, it's transformational for kind of unlocking growth and just knowing you're heading in the right direction more than anything. Right, I've got a few questions for you from the audience. So the first one is, which if I put, I don't know if it comes up for everyone, but how did you know when you were ready to raise?
Yeah, really good question. Really tough to answer on a startup by startup level, but for us, it's almost like we have that window where COVID had evaporated and we felt we were ready to grow the business. To grow the business, it would be really good to have a little bit more money in your bank account and like just be able to hire someone, you know, like maybe your first full-time developer or second full-time developer. And I think that's when hiring is going to be your biggest expense. And I think the moment you're ready to then hire, I think that's like the crux where you're like, right, okay, can we just raise this money? So I think I would say the stage we got to where we're proven our model enough, where we were like, right, we're ready from going from 2 people to a third full-time and maybe a fourth. Can we get some money in? Because now we're ready to sort of like really give this business a go. And that's when I think fundraising comes in.
Yeah, I can certainly agree on the like the hiring side of things. That's when the business really starts to take off, isn't it? When you start to put experts in the right place, and that's when things really start to fly. So yeah, definitely a great question, great answer. Next one. Hi, Siddhi. Loved watching you on Dragon's Den. You were both very impressive. What's your experience been like juggling so many influential investors at once? That's a great question.
So nice. Thank you so much. My like 15 minutes on TV. Loved it. In terms of juggling influential investors, yeah, we had quite a few people in our fundraising sort of like round that were influential. I mean, what I'll say is, look, it's a two-way street. I think we are glad, obviously, to have them, but hopefully they also feel the privilege to invest in like a great company, which is hopefully going to return a lot. And there is actually very little juggling. Like we're so early where we are learning. We change our model as needed. And I think it's not as formal as like it would be for a later stage company. And I don't think early stage companies should be in a position where you are like juggling investors or having to answer too many questions. So for us, we do send like monthly updates. It's a great way to keep them up with what's going on. And I think usually we'll add things like, hey, this is our ask, or like, this is how you guys can help. And ultimately, like I think what works well for us is keeping them updated about our numbers, or like why 1 month it didn't work out, or why this is great, or like what we're thinking, but really brief, short. And I think that's kind of it. I think that's kind of what is like a good relationship at an early stage. And you can go ask them, hey, like I'm looking for this, but really the other way shouldn't be happening so much if you're so early. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely the best companies that I've seen really leverage their investors. And like you say, keeping regularly updated, but crucially asking like, or telling them what you need and asks, and actually, you know, like unlocking the power of, again, that peer network, that experience, and you know, they want you to exceed as much as they do. So that's a great answer. Next question comes from James. Did you have other fundraising rounds before your 1.1 mil raise, and what funding raising rounds are you looking to achieve in the future?
Yeah, so we had like a very small, like tiny SEIS, like 150K or something like that from our like friends right before that. So really, really small. In the future, we are going through YC, which has a demo day culminating in March, which is where like all investors are sort of like investing in startups. We do have enough runway, but I think we might just add on like a little bit of a party round to get people that missed out from investing in the last round to just add some stuff here. So not a huge round, but we might just, allow some of the people that have been asking us to invest in like the final sort of culmination of YC.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And then I've got one more at the moment. So get them in if you do have any last questions before we wrap up. But this one says, what strategic decisions have you made in order to help build a moat around your business and protect yourself from competitors? Always difficult with a marketplace.
Yeah, and I think I would say, look, there's so much theory back and forth about mode, but then what really it is. And with a network, you can say, oh, it's like when network effects are taking place. And I think there are a lot of bullshit ways to answer that question for yourself or to investors. However, I think the reality really is like you're doing something 10x better, you're doing it quick, you're iterating. When it starts to work, you probably will get competitors, but you just have to keep going and just do it faster. And I think ultimately, like your thoughts and like how you decide to shape the business is very much yours. And I think what I'm trying to get to is like, yes, there are things that it'll be difficult to copy because we've had learnings that we keep for ourselves. And it's like, oh gosh, it took us a while. However, I think in like a very macro level of sense, like for marketplaces, like I don't know what's Uber's mode away from the fact that it grew really quickly and then it just did well. And I think it's like now it's everywhere and people like talk about it. It's the first to start. I guess like same with Airbnb. I don't know why there isn't a second big one. I think they did it really well. They started, they're everywhere. There are obviously so many others. There's One Fine Stay, but that's targeted towards like upper end, different. So I'd say, yeah, for marketplace, let's put it this way, we're worried more about ensuring we have product market fit for our customers and also our chefs. We want to make a great platform where customers are like, that was so awesome, like done, I'll do this again. And then for chefs, like, wow, you're giving me so much more income. This is so easy for me. This is a part of my life and I love yhangry. And I think if we just, that's like how we think of it, and everything else is just a little bit, just forget about it. Just focus on customers and chefs.
I think that's such a fantastic answer, because if you think about your example of Uber as well, there are actually lots of competitors to Uber entering the space. But when I think about why I go and seek those out, it's usually because Uber is not fulfilling what I need. It's like, oh, Uber takes ages to try a Bolt, and that in itself is kind of what has derived the need for competition in that space. Whereas if Uber was kind of every 2 minutes I can jump in one, then great. So if you can fill that space, there's no reason for anyone to kind of move on, is there? So fantastic. Cool. We've got 2 questions left, and I'm going to have to draw a line around it then, because I appreciate you've got a very busy day, Siddhi, I'm sure. But we've got one from Anonymous. So, hello, I'm really curious, aside from Dragon's Den and accelerators, how did you approach investors, or did they come to you?
Yes, I think a bit of both. And what helps when you're doing outreach is you need to get warm intros. And this is just like it's not a dirty secret, but I think if you can't, I think the idea which I felt like was, if you can't get a warm intro to an investor, and you couldn't be crafty enough to get there, like what's the point? Like, and I think it's a bit of a shame, because obviously not everyone's going to find a warm intro, but I would say like look through your connections. People, if they introduce you to someone else, that's like such a strong connection. And we did a lot of that to get like the right calls. And then it's just easy because someone's like, okay, someone who I trust just told me about you, tell me about your story. And I will say it's a double-edged sword, because sometimes you ask people who you kind of know to introduce you, and they might not do a good job because they might not actually want to introduce you. So I'll say that's the only thing you want to be careful of. Like if you think it's not going to be like a nice warm intro, then I mean, just like go for it. Like it might even, like don't let it sort of have the inverse effect, but otherwise aim for warm intros where you can.
Yeah, great advice. Definitely. Heinen definitely came and sent me a few messages during the raise. Brilliant. And then last question, which is a classic actually. So how did you work out the valuation of your business when you're going through an investment round?
Yeah, very murky topic again. And I feel like US is a little bit more clearer. And I think UK still is like such a nascent ecosystem. I feel like for tech, it's like still up and coming. Though it's multiple ways to think of it, still really trying to understand. However, I'd say for the early stage, the formula really is what sort of dilution are you happy with and how much do you need to raise? That sets your valuation. And like, let me say that again. How much would you like to raise? And that should be built off on how much runway you want. So let's say you say, look, I need 12 months of runway to prove out this business. In each of those 12 months, I'm going to, and this is like a hypothetical example, just spend 10K. Awesome. So your runway is 120K. This is like a really tiny number, but let's say that's like the number. And you say, okay, I'm going to raise 120K. And now you say, okay, how much am I okay diluting myself? It's obviously never more than 20, 25. That's like top end. So then you're like, okay, is it 10? Is it 5? Maybe that's too low. So I think you then get to the point where how much am I okay diluting myself? And then based on that, that's your valuation. And then especially early stage, like there's very little proof of data or metrics anyway. It's mostly like, is it a great team? Do you have some traction? How big is your vision? How do you, yeah, like what are the signs that this idea is going to work?
Yeah. And I think you did a fantastic job of spending a very small amount of money to show traction, which obviously helped to reduce down the amount of equity that you needed to give away. So that's another kind of really important part of that equation. Look, Siddhi, thank you so much for joining us today. That has been so interesting. All of those fantastic insights. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Harry. Really enjoyed being here. Nice to see you again. And guys, thank you so much for joining. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, a couple of people saying thanks in the chat. Our next event is this time next month. So second Thursday. And we are going to be joined by John Payne, who is the SEO technical director at Noisy Little Monkey. And we're going to be learning all about SEO and how to really improve your business through SEO, all the things to look out for. So make sure you kind of join us for that one. And we will see you next time. Brilliant. Brilliant, Siddhi. Have a great day, and we'll catch you very soon.